Well, look who's here. We are experiencing some transitionary or transitional settings. Let's use the word settings. Set and settings. As you can see, I have a very different background because I'm in a very different place. And even my microphone might sound a little bit different because, well, for today, I don't have one. So don't get used to it because this will probably be at least the only day I won't have a microphone. There's a good chance tomorrow when I will do the Friday Farcast, it'll be in this location. And this location happens to be this room that's adjacent to the new house that we're occupying. So what's interesting is that this brick wall behind me is actually at one point in time the back part of the house, which is kind of cool, right? So what they did is they built this really nice sunroom, which is where I'm streaming from right now, and they did a great job on the sunroom. What we have here. Then even the floor, I think, was at one point the deck, right? This was the deck, and it's not wooden; it's cement, and it looks kind of faded and weathered, but it looks really cool, with that faded, weathered look. And once we had a fence up back here, so I don't have to look into other people's backyards, it'll be fine, and it's actually really peaceful. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being patient as we begin to put the pieces of the new life back together again. It has been a very intense haul over the last 5 days. I think we started off on Friday, and we got the bulk of the material moved on Friday, but it really wasn't the entirety of it. And so in Chinese astrology, I'm a rat, and rats tend to accumulate a lot of things. I'm like, oh, I can't throw that away. I can't throw that away. I mean, there's some things like, I've got things from my kids' childhood, and I have a lot, like, toys, some toys, personal artifacts, books. It's like, I just keep taking that stuff along with me. And I think the biggest culprit of my collection of things is records, CDs, and books, and I have a shit ton of all of the above. And the CDs, like a lot of those CDs, you won't be able to find again. They're just not going to be produced. If you're lucky, maybe you'll find some of it online or whatever. But if I have my druthers and just every month I send my CDs to an encoder and just dump them all on a hard drive. That's what I would do. I would keep some of the ones that are going, that are kind of collector's items. I have to go through my books because there are books that I'm really not that interested in anymore that I need to get rid of. And I used to work for a magazine, so we got a ton of copies of promotional books, and some of those I just need to let go of. Anyway, the sorting out process begins as I begin to rebuild the new studio, which is right next to me on the other side of the place. So it's been a real interesting journey over the last 5. Yesterday was pure chaos. It was pure Mercury retrograde chaos. So we went to my mother's storage space, cleared that out, and the guys who moved us are great guys. And as I was getting ready to leave the storage space, my truck wouldn't start. So luckily, I have a standard shift truck. So I put it in first gear. Those guys pushed it, popped the clutch, and bang, it was off and running. So I was able to get that done. And then as they were coming to the house to drop off this final load, I also have this project car that I've been working on, and nobody wanted to buy it in the state that it was in. So I said, screw it. And I had it shipped here to Kerrville. So that car was coming at the same time as the stuff was coming. So it's like managing, juggling all these kind of massive balls in the air at the same time, and managing all that stuff. But it's that part is done. And Dr. Joan was an incredible help throughout it all. She's got that Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Capricorn, and is as a Pisces, she's more organized than I am as a Virgo. To be honest with you, we have this discussion all the time, and I think it's that Jupiter Capricorn conjunction. Anyway, um, Kerrville is a very different place than Fredericksburg. So I looked up when Kerrville was founded, and it was actually founded in, I think it was 1896, maybe a little bit earlier, 1869. It's one of the two. Anyway, Kerrville is an Aquarian city, and it makes a lot of sense because this is where we have our event every year in Kerrville, at the end of the hills. So it's an 11th house event, and Kerrville is an Aquarian city. Wow. Imagine that. And even the vibe here is more Aquarian. I went to rent a U-Haul truck, and immediately hit off with the dude who was renting me the truck. And we started to talk about the movie Civil War and all this other stuff. And he hooked me up with a mechanic, and it just feels a little more quirky and Aquarian. It's interesting about Fredericksburg is that Fredericksburg is a Taurus city, and it has so many Taurian qualities. All the shops on Main Street, and all the restaurants, and you go down 290 Winery Row, and there's just winery after winery after winery. And it just feels really Taurian. And I realized that there is a connection between the word Taurus and the word tourist. And Fredericksburg is fueled by tourist dollars. So it's going to be a real shift because this place, I feel, is wired a lot differently than Fredericksburg, and I'm looking forward to that. To be completely honest, not that I have any disparaging thoughts or feelings towards Fredericksburg, but it's time for a change. And I've already connected in, that was one thing about Fredericksburg. I never really felt like this guy Bobby helped me out so much in the last 72 hours, from helping me find a mechanic, help me find a tow guy, to being able to store my car at his U-Haul place. It's just easier, on a human level, on a human interactive level. It's easier things, and it's faster, right? Aquarius is just a faster sign than Taurus. Taurus takes time. It's slow. Sometimes it's slow for a reason. In terms of uh, agriculture and growing things, those cycles and the sort of the care that Taurus has is really important, right? But that's just always how Fredericksburg has been. It's kind of lumbering, and I just use the words slow. It's a slow. It's fast in the sense that it has a lot of activity with people, but it's slow in a lot of ways to have some degree of change. Where I feel like this place has a lot more interesting electricity. The other thing that's interesting about this place too is that there's a big river that runs through it, the Guadalupe, and that also to me is very Aquarian, right? There's no ostensible water really in Fredericksburg, but here in Kerrville we have this big beautiful river, the Guadalupe, which is the water bearer. So we have the water bearer running right through the center of town, and I'm really looking forward to spending. What's interesting is that back in 2020, when I was planning on moving from where I was living in Fredericksburg, which was an apartment, to a house, I almost moved to Kerrville. Like I'd been accepted, I'd found a place, and last minute I decided to flip and move to Fredericksburg, or a house in Fredericksburg. So this was kind of on the map a long time ago, and so here it is. We're back, or at least theoretically. Anyway, I hope everybody's having a good holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and everything that goes along with it. It's crazy out there. The driving, by the way, holy fuck. The driving, I don't know about you people, but this Mercury retrograde has been crazy. I've dealt with more weird shit. Maybe it's because I'm driving more, but I've dealt with more weird shit driving wise over the last few days than I've ever I haven't dealt with in a long time, right? Like I had my son with me on Monday, and we were going to Kerrville to unload this U-Haul truck, and we were behind this car. I wasn't riding his ass or anything. I was doing like 60 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour, and I got brake checked by the dude. Like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So as we pull around him eventually, I look over and he's this old codger, and he's like, so I told my kid, I said, flip him off. So he reached his hand out the window and he flipped him off. And I told him, I said, that dude has a gun, right? Like that dude has a gun, and he is just aching for some kind of interaction so he can pull out his fucking gun, right? Like there's a lot of gun frustration going around right now. You can just feel it. That's kind of in the air. Like he's just itching to use that thing. So, I'm going to brake check this dude behind me doing 60 miles per hour. But there is more stuff than just that. I mean, it's crazy. Some crazy accidents. Man, be careful out there with this Mercury retrograde. Really be careful, right? And it's in Capricorn. And it's a cardinal sign. So people are aggressive when they drive under a cardinal sign. And like in fact, I was one of the things that happened was I had to take Dr. J to the optometrist. So it was eye surgery and whole 9 yards, right? And coming back to her place on Monday, I'm in my lane, and all of a sudden this chick in this car just starts moving over to my lane. Like just get the fuck out of here and just let me get in your lane. Again, it's just it's that cardinal energy, the aggressive driving. Be aware of aggressive drivers during the Mercury retrograde, and also pay close attention to commercial vehicles as well, because I saw at least one accident that was definitely commercial vehicle related, and it was three vehicles. So anyway, why don't we get into the weather, and let me see if we can do this here. All right. Do I have it all right? I got it all right. I got it all right. Here we go. There she is. There she is. This is your winter solstice weather report. 29 Sagittarius, about to go into Capricorn season. We'll do a Capricorn show on Sunday night. We'll get off a Sunday night show. It will have Friday forecast tomorrow as well. A little bit of astro weather lead in. Um, there's Mars still hanging out there. I needed Mars, man. I needed Mars in this move. I needed Mars in my first house. It was the only thing that was going to get me through this move. I needed that Mars energy. The last time I moved, Mars was transiting my fourth house. So if you're going to move, make sure Mars is in your fourth house or your first house. First house because you'll have vitality and energy, which clearly at my age I needed Mars. Let's put it that way. So we're at the anaretic degree of the sun, and this is really the letting go period, right? The sun is an immutable sign, and this is where we kind of let go of things. So one of my pieces is that I've been kind of sad about saying goodbye to the old place, but you have to let go. You have to let go and embrace the new, as even if the new is like a new suit and maybe needs some alterations, right? But that's kind of where we are right now. And then at the 29th degree, it can be kind of hard to let go. Think of the sun as being anaretic. Oh, not anaretic, balsamic, right? Think of the sun as being balsamic, and we know that the balsamic moon has a lot of kind of letting go tendencies, or at least it should. Well, with the sun at 29, there is this sense of having to let go of things. It's easier, I think, in a mutable sign, easier in Sagittarius, because there's always the ability to have a philosophical rationale for what you need to let go of. It's easier that way. Now, the one thing that you have to do, though, is you have to be honest, because that's the nature of Sagittarius. And when we have this Sun Neptune square, self-deception can reign supreme. And you have to face your illusions and all the things that go along with it, right? And you have to say, okay, I'm willing to let this go. I'm willing to surrender. I'm willing to, truthfully and honestly, um, kind of say goodbye to something, right? I mean, that's kind of where we are at that 20, because once that sun moves into Capricorn, it is a cardinal point, and we're setting something new, right? We are setting something new. And that new intention, that new energy lasts us for the entire astrological cycle from Capricorn to Capricorn. We check in Cancer 6 months out. Where are we? What are we doing? How are our intentions? Capricorn needs goals. It's always interesting. Like, what are your New Year's resolutions? That's such a Capricorn thing, isn't it? Well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, right? Like, it's such a Capricorn thing, the whole New Year's resolution, which I find fascinating. So yeah, that's true. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not into a New Year's resolution. I just think it's, part of the old world. But there is something about being intentional. You don't have to wait until 12/31 or 1/1, right? Like that energy is now. The energy is now. The letting go is easier now. Be careful for overindulgence. I always bring this up when we have a Mars Neptune square. Overindulgence combined with driving is not a good recipe. Okay, so this is going to be going on through the weekend, right? By the time we hit Sunday night, Monday, and we're really in the swing of the holiday thing, Mars is going to be almost in an exact square with Neptune. So please, 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 if you are going to indulge, make sure that your path home is safe and that somebody else is behind the wheel that is not as celebratory, or at least has not indulged in as much celebration as you have. Or stay home, and if you want to indulge, right? Please, this is a very, very tricky combination here. Now, in terms of the big stuff, seems like I've been away for a long time because so much has happened. We've had this ruling in Colorado, uh, which is really flimsy because they basically put a stay on it. And what do I mean by that? Well, they can't do anything until the Supreme Court actually rules on their ruling. And if the Supreme Court doesn't do anything, then it reverts to whatever the status was in Colorado before their activist judges decided that they wanted to take Trump off the ballot, right? So that's your Mars Neptune square right there. Because when we get into Sagittarius, we get into law. That's what Sagittarius is about. Sagittarius makes the laws. That's what happens with Sagittarius. Capricorn enforces the laws. Libra counsels and defends the laws or the lawless in many cases, right? That's how those three signs work. So we're seeing already that there are mile wide holes in their Swiss cheese in Colorado. So it'll be interesting to see if other states decide to follow suit. But if Colorado is anything of a precedent, then most states will have the same clause that the Supreme Court will have to weigh in on removing a presidential candidate off the ballot. So, Trump is like a black hole, right? Anytime something like that happens, he just gets stronger. Like he feeds off dark matter. So I would not be surprised if his poll numbers go up. Who was I listening to the other day? It was somebody really, really astute. It was somebody really, really astute, and they believe that this is a setup for Trump. I don't want to get into it right now. I want to stay with the weather. I'm just looking at the big picture here, right? The big picture. So Mercury is retrograding, and again, what do we see with like the Colorado decision? Well, we're going to take him off the ballot. Well, all of a sudden now we really can't. Right. So you're going to see things like that with this Mercury retrograde. And I talked about this before. And it predates even what happened, say, in the last 48 hours with this Colorado thing, right? Like anything that's happened prior, which could be, where do we go back? We could go back to when Mercury was in Sagittarius. We could go back even the last 6 months. Like we go back to the last time we had Mercury in Gemini, right? That there are decisions and things that people have said, and in a political realm, that they're going to come back and bite them in the ass, right? It's going to bite them in the ass when Mercury goes retrograde into Sagittarius, and they're going to be caught with their pants down. So if a lot of you out there are looking to keep score on some of this stuff, sharpen your pencils, because you're going to see a lot of retractions, a lot of rebuttals in a world where it only appears that people that are going through some kind of struggle session have to apologize. You'll see others who are kind of outside of that wind up having to do some sort of mea culpa, right? So this is going to be a very interesting time with this Mercury retrograde, because it's changing signs. It's going from, the hierarchical and deeply administrative Capricorn into Sagittarius, which is like, you can't fucking do that. Like, you may think you can do that, but you can't fucking do that. Oh, color me shocked. So I'm actually looking forward to it. This is going to be, we're already seeing it. We're already seeing Colorado take a big swing and a miss there. Anyway, Venus, it's now in the third decan of Scorpio. So we're dealing with things that are much closer to home, right? That third decan puts it in the Cancerian decan, or the decan of the fourth house. So if you're going to have some holiday celebration and people over, I think it's good. We've got this nice trine going on. By the time Christmas rolls around, it'll be in that third decan, Venus trining Neptune, good tidings, good feelings, a sense of destiny, companions of destiny, right? Transcending difficulties, transcending things that have been problematic in the past. I mean, all those things are very true when you get into the Venus Neptune trine. So if you're looking to spend some time with some relatives or friends, and the last few years have been rough, I don't see that this year. I feel like there is the potential for a much deeper sense of reconciliation. So don't be afraid to venture out into behind enemy lines, right? I mean, I think it's good. I think it's really, really good, and a lot of frayed bonds can be repaired. Now we have the moon in Aries, which for me is, I think, really good because I'm still in the move, and Aries is all about overcoming obstacles and challenges. So we got this moon in Aries right now, and people are very passionate about kind of what's going on in the world, right? There's a lot of impassioned people, and it's not bad. I don't think being impassioned is bad. The being impassioned is part of our experience as humans, and especially humans in the West. In the Eastern traditions, it's like it's much more of a kind of Zen flatline, you know, cultural expression. Not in all cases, but mostly. But in the West, we're an impassioned group of people. So today, it's like, yeah, let it out. Let it out. If you feel, I mean, it's positive impassion, right? It's not negative. It's not like Mars is squaring the moon and you're all pissed off and you want to read people the riot act. It's more like allow the energy to manifest itself in goodwill, good cheer, good vibes, right? I mean, for crying out loud, it's the last day of Sagittarius, the last degrees of Sagittarius. Let it out while you can. Oh, there's a deer right over there. So the deer own this neighborhood, by the way, and so I can see into my neighbor's backyard, which is weird. I don't like it. It's not going to be that way forever. But on the other side of that fence, I got a deer over there just hanging out, laying down, looking over here. What's going on, deer? Um, is that making sense with Mars and the moon? It's like, yeah, be alive. Be alive. Don't allow these fucktards who are want to just make your life freaking miserable, whatever it is. These little petty tyrants, these little petty dictators, do not today. Today's a day where it's like, no, this is a day where you as an individual can live with a sense of gusto, passion, zeal, right? Like live it, and damn the torpedoes. And don't let other people dictate how you're going to feel or express yourself, particularly today. Today's one of those days where, look, even the sun, right, at 29 Sag, coming in and trining Jupiter. This is one of those live large days. Live large or go home. What is this? I'm getting a happy solstice. Here we go. Happy solstice. What else? What else? What else? What else? The sun is coming in and sextiling Saturn. So again, if we're looking at zero Capricorn as being that degree where you set your intention in a cardinal phase, you've got Saturn there supporting it. Be mindful. You can get a lot of shit done. What do you want to accomplish in 2024? I know we're not there yet, but this is the time to have the discussion. What do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? For some of you, it's just like, I just want to get through this and survive this motherfucker. I totally understand that. Totally get it. Um, but there are other higher theoretical goals, right? Like if you want to become more sovereign. And I'm not talking about learning, sovereign law and natural law backwards and forwards. Although if you want to, feel free to do that. It's more about the thing that's inside of you makes you a sovereign individual, right? Which means that you are your own your own lord and master of your own domain, right? And that applies to women as well, not just men. So whether it's your home, whether it's your body, you want to be sovereign over your body, take over your body. Have rulership over your body. Get rid of your bad habits. Get rid of your bad diet, right? That's one way of being sovereign. Owning your body. You own your body on that level, boy, the rest of your life will then really begin to change. You're like, well, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? Where else can I, put some time and effort into my experience, right? So that's one thing you can do. I mean, there's whatever you choose to be intentional about. Saturn's your friend. It's like, hey, lean into it, right? And Saturn in Pisces, I would also say you can't do it alone. The times when I experienced the deepest and most transformational change in my life was the time when I felt closest to God. And in my own way, I put God first with everything. I mean, I was like a freak about it. And my life went in a very different direction, very, very different direction. And I was able to do things and accomplish things that I had never done before because I was stuck, right? I was stuck on the Groundhog Day wheel, and then through divine intervention and grace and understanding and recognizing that my strength or my abilities or whatever, that they were a part of me, but they were also connected to something much bigger and greater, and I needed to acknowledge that. And when that acknowledgement comes in, when you acknowledge that, your abilities and your power becomes potentiated, right? It gets bigger. And then when you see the results, you understand and you say thank you. And then you get kind of hooked on this, right? And then the next thing you know, you're just, you know, you're growing by leaps and bounds. To me, that is what the Sun Saturn sextile is about. So leaning into it. For some people, it's very orthodox, and that's fine. And for other people, it's much more personal and finding that connection within. But that's if you really want to uh, put a much more enduring stamp on your personal change, that's what I would definitely suggest. And think big, right? The sun is trining Jupiter. Think big. Why not? Why not? All right. Um, let's come back here. I wanted to thank Greg for providing today's thumbnail for the Astro weather. And he sent me something that was very unlike the landscape portraits that I like to put up or other people have sent me. And I thought, yeah, this is what morning is for some people, right? For some people, they've got to get up and they have to interact with that structure or that electrical power station as a device, either directly working at it or driving by it or it powering their homes. And I thought, you know what? Let's put this up there. It's not as picturesque, but it's a part of our experience. So, Greg, thanks for your image. I appreciate that. All right, let's get into our True Hemp Science star of the day. And that is none other than, where'd you go? I just had you up here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. He went into a black hole. I just had him up here. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Damn, Sam. Let me go to the trash. Let me see. It might have somehow. Oh boy. What's the date? The 21st? Where the heck did it go? But I put so much time and effort into this as he furtively scans his cluttered desktop. Here we go. All right. Your true hemp science star of the day is Frank Zappa. There are some interesting candidates today, but we had some requests for Zappa. And I thought, yeah. The problem with Zappa is his chart. And this is not an A rated chart. This is a C rated chart in terms of the rodent ratings, lowest rodent being the Grand Dame of astrological charts. But I think in a lot of ways it fits pretty well. Uh, she's got Zappa as a double Sag, again, 29 degrees, anoretic degree right at the end. And, one thing that you get from Zappa is you get his unvarnished version of the truth. He's got Mercury and Sag on the ascendant, and that makes a lot of sense. This is a guy that went before Congress and he testified basically for artists to be able to have free speech. This is during the Tipper Gore era. You know what's interesting about that Tipper Gore era is that it got really muddied. And I'm not a fan of Tipper Gore, but I understand where they were coming from. They were coming from this place that music was, and particularly, they didn't want to say it. Like they had to make it all music, but they were coming from this place where rap was becoming extremely violent and misogynistic and all the things that, well, it became more of as time went on. So Tipper Gore was not wrong about that, right? I feel like, and this is just my own personal opinion, that one of the reasons why we're in such a shitty place to a large degree is the degradation of culture. And I do believe, and there are people inside the Black community who will agree with me 100% that hip hop is one of the reasons why. Rap is one of the reasons why, because of what it does and how it lionizes a particular lifestyle and the treatment of women and all the stuff that we know about modern day rap, right? Wasn't always that way, but that's how it's de-evolved to. So I think Zappa was on the right. He was like, well, you can't really put a label on free speech. I mean, we have this thing called the First Amendment, and then that's when the stickers got put on the records. And if you're a kid, that's the first thing you look for, I'm sure. Oh, here's one of those stickers. Let me get it. Right? I mean, it's just the weird way the world is. But Zappa always did his best to tell the truth with Mercury and Sagittarius, right? But he's got these squares going on with Neptune and the Moon, and how do I feel? Like, was Frank Zappa an ultimate truth teller? I would say no. I would say no. I would say that he's really good at things like speech. I think he's good at kind of like overarching systems. Like there's this one quote of his. He's got great quotes, by the way. He's very quotable. This is one quote where he talks about at some point, like the circus is just going to leave town, and everything that they've thrown out there will be gone, and all that's going to be left is just a brick wall, right? And what he's referring to is like the society of the spectacle, and then once it's all gone, you're just left with this facade, right? And I think Zappa had a pretty good understanding of that. He had a pretty good understanding of how the music industry worked. His deals were always in his favor, right? I don't think he ever had to suffer through a bad deal or um, do a lot of. There were some suits involved, but I think it was usually for people using his music either in ways that were not intended or not agreed upon. In fact, I even know for a fact that his wife Gail sued the company that I worked for because we had a deal with Rykodisc, and Rykodisc had Zappa's releases, all of them. They re-released all Zappa stuff. So Gail got involved with that, and she sued the company that I worked for, claiming that we didn't have the rights to his music and the publishing. And all. It was, and I think we actually had to pay her, believe it or not. But I think Zappa was pretty good at that. Where I don't think Zappa um, shows up as stuff like the Federal Reserve, and like I would not call him a classic conspiracy theorist, but he is somebody that does have some inside baseball and he did have a knack for being able to point things out. And I think there's some blind spots, honestly, in his truth telling. Right? He's got a Neptune Moon conjunction. What's really interesting about this, if this chart is remotely close, we think of Neptune as being melodic and pleasant and very sort of dreamy and very Piscean. But he's got it in Virgo, and he's got that moon in Virgo. And Frank is, he's got kind of a prickly personality, and I think it's the moon in Virgo. And he's got that sextile with the moon and Mars, and the sextile with the moon and Pluto. So he's really okay with how he expresses himself emotionally. But you can also see where, as an artist, there are periods where he can go into some incredibly, beautiful passages, like what's the name of the song? Peaches and Regalia. Right. When you listen to Peaches and Regalia, it's like fucking beautiful. Like if Zappa wanted to, he could have created beautiful music. Now, for some people, they'll say, well, everything he created is beautiful. I don't agree with that. I think that his love for atonal music and people like Alban Berg and Stokowski and a lot of the postmodern atonal composers. It's not my thing, right? And Zappa's into it, and I feel like that's where you get into kind of this kind of Virgoan. He's a bit of a control freak, right? And he likes that music because it has to be scored out, right? And there's a lot of rigorous and demanding changes in that kind of music. So I feel like you get a lot of that with that Neptune Moon conjunction in Virgo. And what's interesting is that his true node is in Libra. And again, when you look at the right stuff, I talked about before, when we talked about how Sagittarius makes the laws, Capricorn defends the laws, or no, I'm sorry, Capricorn rules on the laws and enforces the laws, but Libra defends the laws or the lawlessness. So you see that with Zappa, with his true node in Libra, right? Like that's where, he goes into those places. He's very keen and aware about the kind of the artistic balance of creative freedom and discipline and structure. He's very good at it. He did not do drugs. That's one of the things. So had he done drugs, it would have been the undoing of Frank Zappa. But what Frank was into was sex. So we have Mars and Scorpio, and what is it doing? It's sextiling the moon and Neptune. And Frank loved to tour. Oh boy, he toured all over the world, ninth house. Why? Because Frank had a gal in every town. And he had an agreement with Gail, his wife, which was what goes on the road stays on the road, right? So then when he would come home, he was devoted father, loving husband, but on the road, Frank was a man. He was like somebody who hadn't eaten for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you just dropped him at a golden buffet, right? That's like Frank Zappa, on the road. Um, and a lot of his relationships are secret with Venus and Sag in the 12th house. I wonder if eh, he's such a control freak that he probably was all about quote unquote safe sex. But I wonder if Frank Zappa had kids outside of his marriage, because he's got this Uranus in the 5th house, which is children, right? And he's got Venus over here in Sagittarius, the secret. I would not be surprised if there's a couple little Zappas running around somewhere in Europe. Jupiter Saturn conjunction, and that's where Frank gets his focus, right? And whenever you see somebody that's got a Jupiter Saturn conjunction, these are very focused people, very, very focused. And with Saturn in front, he's able to delay gratification, right? That's how this works. For example, would have been a 2 donut guy, believe it or not. Delay the gratification and reap the rewards later. And he's got this Sun Jupiter trine, Sun Saturn trine. He's a hardworking motherfucker. Frank Zappa was no slouchy Sagittarius by any stretch. This guy worked his ass off. And he's got Chiron and Pluto. What's interesting to be here, here's where I'm going to go with this. Clearly, Zappa is a boomer, but he is about as early as a boomer as you can get. If he were alive today, he'd be 83. So we know that the boomers are defined by Pluto and Leo. Zappa was not a hippie guy. He was like a lot of the boomers, when you get into like 46, 47, that 7-year period is a lot, right? It's a lot. Frank Zappa is 20 years old by the time 1960 hits, right? I think it's around 61 or 62. He's on the Steve Allen show and he's playing a bicycle. So Frank Zappa is much more influenced by the beats, right? Like he's much more of a beatnik guy. Like that's more of his culture. And the boomers were the flower power boomers do have a little beat in them, but not like Zappa does. His cultural ciphers are very, very different, right? So in 1950, he's 10 years old, and the war is just over. So he's growing up literally in the 50s, and he comes of age really in 1960. And a lot of the flower power kids are born in 47, 48. So by the time 1960 rolls around, they're like, 13 years old, 12 years old. And it's not until they get to 68, 69, that they start to come of age. And, you have this wave of flower power teens, or even if you go back to like 1946, 45, 40. But Zappa's not that, right? He comes from a different, so he actually kind of despised those people. And you can see this. Zappa is he's not romantic. He is not romantic at all. He's got Pluto in the 8th house, so he's very into sex. Obviously, we've already talked about that. He's got that Mars trine, the Venus trine. And with Chiron in Leo, something happened to Frank at birth. I don't know what happened to him at birth. I don't have his birth story in front of me, but that's where his wound was, coming into the planet, right? Uranus in the 5th, he's unusually creative. He's not creative in a traditional sense. He's always going to be kind of the outsider creatively. And the last thing I'll end on here is the South Node in Aries, which is fascinating because Frank Zappa's father worked for the military-industrial complex. He designed rocket propulsion systems, like payloads and stuff like that, right? That's what his father did. And so here, the South Node, Aries, 4th house, you have military. Now, he's not in the military, but he works for the military. He's on contracts with the military. That's his father. And one of the things that Zappa, he nearly blew off his hands when he was young because he was fucking around with explosives. Right? Where do you think he got the explosives from? You know what I'm saying? Right. So that's Frank's roots. Frank comes from uh, that background. He's born in Baltimore, Maryland, military industrial complex, Department of Defense, contracts, you name it, right? That's his roots. He's also a bit of a warrior, right? Like he was a warrior for free speech and, all the stuff that we already talked about. Then you get into the Aries Libra axis with Zappa. Very interesting character. No air in his chart. If we believe this chart, we have his MC and his true note, and that's it. And the thing with people that don't have a lot of air is that they need other people to give them their kind of an objective view of who they are and what they're doing. So Zappa didn't really have that. And I'm just curious as to how much he would get feedback from the people in his group so that he would understand some, because he could be very immersed in whatever it is he was doing, right? It was like Frank's world. And when you have more air in your chart, you're kind of more aware of the voices in the air. He just wasn't, for better or worse. So there you go. There's your star of the day, the true Hemp science star of the day, Frank Zappa. And let me just do a quick little banner for True Hemp Science. If you are interested in starting your new year on a good health trip, coining the 60s, a new health intentional new relationship with your health, go check out truehempscience.com, where they have a bevy of products for your health needs, including some of the best gummies for sleep and otherwise that are available on the internet. Trust me on this. And their their CBD. Their CBD is fantastic. They've got alcohol-based, water-based, spagyrics, topicals, you name it. Just go there and type in 15MINS, and you'll get free goodies when you spend $100 or more. That's 15MINS, free goodies with $100 or more. And $150 more get you free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. TrueHempScience.com, your only source for CBD products that are organically sourced and micro-managed and procured by our guy, Chris. All right. That'll do it for today. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience. I really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow with a Friday forecast over on YouTube, and we'll lead in with a little bit of astro weather. Everybody stay warm and cozy. Keep your head on a swivel. Watch out for these fucking maniacs on the road with this Mercury retrograde. And if the weather is getting nasty in your part of the world, please take double care. Okay? Thanks. Love you all. Be here tomorrow. Bye for now.